Duggan, now seeing no way out, sprang up the sidewalk, ducked behind his horses, pulled his own revolver, threw it over the horses' manes, and fired. Lamb took the ball in his mouth, which exited out the back of his head. He turned and fell dead in the snow, face down. Captain Perkins arrived shortly with Deputy Foster right behind, at which time Duggan surrendered his gun and, pointing at Lamb, stated,
"I'm the man that done that."
He was escorted away by Captain Perkins. Foster and Coroner Law then examined the body of Lamb and the area around him. Lamb's .41 caliber pistol was laying in the snow, butt up and fully cocked, failing to go off when it fell. Mindy Lamb allegedly rushed to the scene upon being notified of the shooting and held her husband's head in her lap, sobbing beyond control. Coroner Law then summoned a quick jury after viewing the body, which was then taken to the I.N. Rogers undertaking parlors. Later that afternoon, Duggan was released, and Lamb's body was taken to the Lamb residence, where it was placed in the parlor. Mrs. Lamb was not allowed in the room until, as the coroner ordered, she was sufficiently calmed to go through this horrible ordeal. Martin Duggan was charged with murder. However, the newspapers reported that it was commonly understood among residents that the shot fired by Mart Duggan was done so in self-defense, and that any court in the land would find him not guilty. Accordingly, he was not incarcerated while waiting for the hearing in Justice McDowell's court, scheduled for Wednesday, November 24th. 7 witnesses were called in the crowded courtroom to hear the case against Duggan, all of whom had either arrived after the incident had actually occurred or who confirmed the incident as reported to be true. During the trial, Duggan's lawyer asked not one question of the witnesses, and at 4 p.m. the prosecution finally rested. The defense immediately moved that the case be dismissed on the grounds of self-defense and that Duggan be discharged from custody, which was done immediately by Justice McDowell, as the prosecution had no further evidence or objection. But the case was not over for Lamb's wife, Mindy. Her husband was buried in Leadville's Evergreen Cemetery, January 2, 1881, but she was unable to put the matter aside. As one local newspaper reported, the bereaved wife is almost inconsolable with grief at the terrible shock thus occasioned, and kind friends are doing all in their power to console her for the great loss she has sustained. Martin J. Duggan, in 1886, was interviewed by an Eastern journalist who had read articles about Mart's publicly stated contributions to the local cemetery. His reply to that reporter, and the reporter's final comments, seemed to say it all.
"I'm not one of that class who opened a recruiting office for the cemetery, nor was I ever in but one homicide, and that, as you know, was forced upon me one day when I was driving down West Fifth Street. I can refer you to any of my old force, and they will bear me out when I say that I told each and every one of them always to take chances with their own life before they needed to use 6-shooters. I don't like this thing of using a man's character as a football or a toy with which to amuse the readers of a newspaper. But what's the use of kicking? There's not 1 out of 1,000 who believe all the wild stories of how many men I've killed. But it hurts my feelings. Do you suppose a man wants to go along the street and have a schoolboy and girl point him out as a man who helped fill the graveyard? 'Tis not the man I've been.
With a laugh that was mingled with mirth and pain, he left the interview and started for his home and fireside. He must be remembered as the genial man he was, with a heart that would make 10 for the shrunken mortals of the East. Mart Duggan was finally honored on October 16, 2010, 112 years after his murder, when an appropriate marker was placed on his grave in Riverside Cemetery with his family, and where he may finally rest in peace. His service to Leadville need not have ended from a bullet, but his service can certainly not be forgotten.